Hello, I'm Carole Sawo. The elusive universal code, what does that mean to people? Well, it means different things. So for the mathematician, it would mean a sequence of numbers that can account for everything from binary code into something like the Riemann hypothesis. When it comes to the physicist, he might be looking at things like electromagnetics, or we go into astronomy and people are looking at the cosmos. To me, they're all studying the same thing, but in different languages. And so when we are looking for a universal code, then we have to look at the science aspect of the code, but also the philosophical aspect of the code. And instead of fitting one discrete pattern into all things, we have to stand back and observe the pattern to reveal itself, which in my understanding and experience happens in full view. So, for example, the code has always been in existence, but it is invisible because it is right in front of us. So when we look at a leaf in nature, for example, we can look at the fractal theories. The leaf unfolds and we can see certain patterns in it. And for anyone that doesn't understand what a pattern is, well, I study patterns in everything, in nature and primarily in the depth of the human mind. But also I study atypical patterns. So let me give you an example of a pattern. Well, easily night and day, that would be a polarized pattern. We have the sun and the moon, and so one is light and one is dark. So that's where we can begin, and we can map onto that a binary code. But a binary code, how does that fit into time and space? So in order to understand a motif, a one-size pattern to answer all the questions in the entire universe, what we have to do is to keep it very simple, actually. And where I think some very brilliant minds have almost gotten to it and then couldn't quite perceive it is because you almost have to leave behind your human comprehension. You have to adopt the mind of the artist to come away from science, to go all the way into more of the aesthetic, invisible realms in order to come back and perceive it. And not everybody's mind can do that. Sometimes minds break in their quests, and I see this all the time in academia. Some really brilliant minds fail, or more often they perceive it accurately, but they take it back to the tribe who take a view on it. And of course the tribal mind is where it is of the day, and so the person might come back with brilliant pattern to account for everything, but it's then ridiculed by everybody else. Now, why I think I've seen the pattern, well, actually I produced it in a book years ago, and I'm bringing it to the table now to more fully flesh it out for you, because I recognised back then, whilst I published it, that human consciousness needed to progress a certain amount for people to be able to perceive it, but also for it to have predictability. Anybody in academia will tell you that for a theory to hold water, it needs to have certain qualities to it. So first of all, it needs to be observable. It needs to be replicable. So that means we need to be able to see it and to see it replicate itself. And then it needs to hold true over time. So we always work in the null hypothesis. So here's the theory of the universe, or rather breaking the universal code. I think it's really beautiful because I noticed it as studying psychoanalysis. So I was looking at depth psychology into the archetypal realm, which takes you back into the very back of our mind, which really is where we leave our mind into the universal mind. And then if the pattern exists beyond our mind into the cosmos mind, then it should also, shouldn't it, count for things like astronomy, and then come back all the way into our everyday experience and behaviour. So I presented this pattern. It's frequency based, and I'm going to go through the wavelengths for the science mind. I'm also going to point the mathematicians in the direction of solving Riemann, although you're going to need me to do that to put the pattern on top of it for you. So if that £1,000,000 is still up for grabs, if there's a professor in math watching this, please get in contact and we'll share that £1,000,000 prize. But what does it mean? Why am I showing it to you now in this climate that we're in at the moment? Well, the pattern has predictability to it. And so when people go into a certain part of the pattern of experience, they can become lost because they'll go into a land that is non-mathematical. Numbers start to jump about, sort of weird things can happen, but that is part of the process of the pattern. To have things at extremes means that at the one end, things need to be, very predictable and perceivable, as in 2 + 2 = 4. But at the other end, what do we do when our mind is fragmented? Is there, as Nietzsche would say, in the chaos, is there a dancing star? And is that dancing star the universal code? Well, I think it is. So I'm going to go over now and talk in different languages to you. I'm going to break it down into mathematical language, into archaeology, so the historians will like this, into colour spectrum and into frequency language, and then into the human energy system. So I'm talking in many languages at the same time. So that means that I talk in holograms, and so the human mind is not a two-dimensional experience, it's a holographic experience. Now, when you increase your level of knowledge and comprehension, the mind can wobble a bit whilst you integrate new information into it. So this video does have a disclaimer on it, and I'm going to explain fully the different levels of the pattern and bring it back to simplicity. I'll just say before I begin that the theory of everything is a subset of the universal code, and so I hope you like what I'm about to show you now. So this is the code to the universe. You'll see behind me I've plotted everything onto the one diagram, and I'm going to talk in different languages, and so right at the far end you'll see physics. So I'm going to start off and show where the code applies to physics, and then I'm going to come all the way across here through archaeology into astrology, and then we're going into the mind, into psychology, psychoanalysis, mythology, and then all the way across here into philosophy and spirituality, because essentially the code should uphold, shouldn't it, in every single discipline. Now, you might get some cross-synaptic firing here, and you might not consciously understand this, but what I'm suggesting is this is a blueprint to all of our mind, and in fact the global mind, the collective mind. And so whilst we might not consciously understand what we're looking at, unconsciously there's a memory, a recognition in carbon structure. And so this is on from DNA and this is on from RNA, by the way. This is depth psychology. So let me start off in physics and show you how you can see down the middle here that I have the light spectrum. Now, first of all, just to tell you about human perception. Humans can only perceive a certain window of visual information and auditory information. Now, you'll notice that, for example, animals, dogs can hear outside of the human window of perception. So dogs and bats, bats are fascinating with the echolocation. They can decode frequencies that humans cannot. And this is why we've actually been stuck in our limitation of comprehension. I think for a very long time the window of human perception has just been sort of shut by two gates, and so this is about showing you beyond the visible. Now, just because you can't see something doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So you can perceive within the window. So let me plot the window on here first of all. So the window of human perception is from here to here, and it's normally 400 to 700 nanometers. And so this is what is visible. This is the pattern. This is the visible pattern that you might see it. this is what I've seen as well, the invisible pattern that is consistent throughout. Now I'm plotting this as a two-dimensional pattern, but it actually goes three-dimensional, and then on from that, if I apply a spiral motion to it, then we go beyond the dimensions time and space, so we can go into a holographic perception. So I'll start off basic in science for the mathematician and those that like the bottom-up perspective. So this is science bottom-up, this is philosophy top-down, and so it all meets here at the azimuth. Everything returns to zero. Right, so you'll recognise simple colour light spectrum down the middle here, and so I'll just go through the numbers. So the window of perception I've said is already between 400 and 700, and so in wavelength light spectrum frequencies we've got the wavelength in nanometers, radiation above 350 is above here, and so we've got 400, 800, 400, 480, 530, 580, 610, 690. Okay, so anything that hits our eye and then is decoded by our brain that is below this frequency or above that frequency, typically we can't perceive it. I've spent my life studying invisible things, so that's why I have been able to perceive it. So that's why I'm showing it to you. Right, down here it goes infrared, and up here it goes ultraviolet. Now when I come on to the spiritual aspect and talk about chakras, then I want you to bear in mind that not all the information that is passed on to us, this is something else I say, always go back to the source, because the information that we have got now in our minds is kind of a cornucopia of things that we've learned at school. And what I learned at school is that not everybody really understood what they were on about, and sometimes they'd regurgitate knowledge that wasn't quite right. And so we're keeping these colours primary, which is where it ties into math. We're sticking to primary code here for the moment, whether you're in mathematics or whether you're all the way over here in spirituality, because before now we've gone purple and magenta, and that has been the mistake in spirituality. It's why you can't perceive the gold, the black and the silver and white chakras, which do exist. But if you go into anything like yoga, you're going to be doing the frequency ohming between the window of perception. Okay, let me start off all the way across here in physics. So these are the different disciplines. That's the pattern. As I said before, the theory of everything is a subset of this. So this is the pattern of 3, 6 and 9, and we'll start off in just simple binary code. I'm going to talk many languages. Sometimes you'll understand what I'm saying, sometimes you won't. But maybe you'll understand it straight away. Maybe you'll return to this video in a while and think, oh, actually, I do know what she's on about. Right, physics. Let's start in physics. So electromagnetics. So we have going down the frequency spectrum. By the way, this is also levels of consciousness, which I'll say more when I get to psychoanalysis. So we've got gamma rays up here, X-rays, ultraviolet and infrared, going infrared, and then radio waves down here. And this is really, really fascinating. Telecommunication, radio waves, television, but also this be able to see beyond. So this is also telepathy down here, and more psychic ability. But let's stay in science. Okay, binary code. So we can map the binary code 0 and 1 down here. This actually forms, you'll see I've got an arrow here. So it forms back up into a circle. So we go circular motion. We actually go through all the shapes here. So this is, first of all, this is the north-south axis here. Binary code in math. Those of you that are studying Riemann and your mind is starting to wobble because you're coming away from the framework of predictable coding, your mind is orientating around this frequency down here. So you have to come away from your scientific mind, which is why a lot of people sort of fragment at this point, who have a very linear logical mind, because you like things to be in a linear order. or to perceive this pattern, this is linear, logical, and then this is non-linear, non-logical, but the two come together. But if you're just going to stay in your linear interpretation of information, then there's a point here with Riemann where it's going to fragment. And so the Riemann hypothesis down here, what does that mean? That means that all of the zeros, all of this adds up to zero according to the zeta function. Okay, those of you that are not in mathematical discipline, you won't understand what I'm saying here, but this is how Riemann zeros all add up, through the azimuth, because you've gotten stuck in your either or perception of things. And if you go holographic, you'll be able to see it, but also it's non-circular. So there is a way, this is a pattern, but it's non-circular, and you've gotten stuck in looking at your right angles. Okay, so this is the zeta function. Everything goes back to zero. You might have heard that, and it absolutely does. So this is the journey of us through life as well. By the way, when I come on to mythology, I'm going to be talking about the Wizard of Oz. And so what was brilliant about that book is some people thought it was a bit bizarre. Some people start studying it and really relate to it. The characters in the mind, the archetypes down here. But what Baum wrote in mythology was part of the universal code. And so some people connect with it. Life can take on a bizarre element to it. But human consciousness needs to progress. And if we stay where we are, we're not going to get anywhere, are we? And so I could introduce my favourite William Blake quote at this point: without contraries, there is no progression. So you might look at this and think, oh my goodness, what is this girl on about? So it might be contrary to your understanding at the moment, but that doesn't mean that it's not true. It means that in between where you are, where I am, where other people are, in the gaps we have expansion, and we need expansion, and we need the polarity so that we can advance. We need polarity in motion, in everyday energy, but we also need the polarity in mind dynamics so that we can advance consciousness. At the moment I'm producing this video is because we are going to advance consciousness, and a lot of people are going to be down here getting a bit confused as to what's happening, which is why I'm showing you the pattern today. Okay, let's come across into archaeology. Everyday people that like to dig about in the dirt, so that can be mapped onto here. If you think about the quest of the archaeologist, they want to find the Holy Grail, and so they go digging about. Sometimes they go up mountains. Up here in archaeology, it goes into more alienation or more spiritual. They'll look at symbolism, cave paintings to understand this pattern. So up here is where the archaeologists might go, up the mountain for some enlightenment, but otherwise they'll go down into grass here. I could draw parallel lines across here, even through the different disciplines. It just comes down one and then down the next one. So up at the mountain here, comes down to grass, which is the colour green. Okay, comes down to earth, which is the colour, this is orange going into red, so it's going into the brown here. So they dig down under the earth. I'm not even going to start on religion, but you can map religious, not religion, but spiritual language onto this. Under the earth, and then they want to find the Holy Grail. Now down here, the pattern splits, and it needs to split for progression. But in the split is where a lot of people kind of wobble quite a bit. So they can either go the simple route and find the gold, or they can go the crazy route and interdiction into the fool's gold. And so that's the language that I'm going to use when I'm talking about archaeology. Come across now to astrology. I haven't mapped all the planets on here, but it's quite simple too. I'm just showing you how the main ones. So we've got the sun up here. To give it a binary code, it's 0. And then we've got the moon down here. Binary code is 1, and everything falls in between 0 and 1. And down here is Venus. That's also the heart chakra, colour green. That's also the lapis elixir, the prized gem of an angel. And then down here we've got Mars, which is fire. Now down here comprehension gets really fiery, and so this is an interesting aspect. This is where human consciousness is at the moment, by the way. This is why this year so many people have gone through so much. We're going through what's called the black chakra, which is down here. So there's going to be a lot of kind of burning off, and that will mean different things to different people watching this. Some people will experience actual fire, some people will experience heat within the body, and then different interpretations of going through sort of the Mars in the mind. Down here, the black chakra is the shadow chakra, and so we have to walk through the earth, through Riemann. We have to walk through all of this slowly, and don't rush anything here. And this is the land, unfortunately, of misperception as well, because now we go into the invisible realm down here. So what I'm suggesting is we don't need to panic, actually, because I'm showing you that you're still on track, even when you feel you've completely come off of it. You see, the problem with human consciousness is we've been led to believe a lot of things that weren't true, and as a result, we've kind of been kept contained within our little minds and kept very low within our intellect. But we're really smarter than we've even been given ourselves credit for. Occasionally you get somebody with a really smart mind comes out with something, of course they get sort of rubbished for it. But my theory is why are we all staying small? We have so much. Our brains are so smart, why aren't we using more of them? And I think why is because when people stop being able to perceive something, they then think it doesn't exist, and then other people say, well, you must be crazy because that can't have happened. But I'm suggesting no, you're not, and you've got to keep walking and come all the way back around and to get back into the heartland. Okay. So then that's astrology then. I've explained the light spectrum. If I talk in frequencies, the window of perception starts here, 720, and it comes down. I could draw the human body on top of here too. In fact, I will. So let me show you. So here's your, actually your head is here. Here's your head. And then there's your shoulders, and then, okay, there's your body. Okay, can you see that? So you see how this is the pattern of everything, so it maps onto everything, so it maps onto our body too. Those of you doing spirituality recognise these are the chakras, although you won't have been taught the gold, the white, the silver and the black. People say that the base chakra is here. Now why I was able to see the black chakra is actually I was studying psychology, and I was studying sound and light spectrums, and there's a phenomena in psychology that they were, just to put it in a nutshell, they were picking up the fundamental frequency of sound down here, even when it wasn't included, so it wasn't technically there, but they could still hear it. And so they called it the missing fundamental. And so I mapped this onto different aspects of these disciplines. You see, when you study within one discipline, you'll only have so much. Let's say you get 80% knowledge, you'll map onto it another 10% of your own. How you fill in the gaps if you stay in one discipline is to go across to the other disciplines, and that's what I did. That's where I got the pattern from, because when I found gaps when I was studying psychology and psychoanalysis, when I found gaps I went into mythology and fairy tale, or I went into grounded physics and mapped all of these onto this same pattern. So the base chakra is below the belly button. It's money, it's sex, and it's everything kind of enraged as well. So things get really quite hot down here. In The Wizard of Oz, here I'm talking about the poppy fields, because here's where we go into misperception and can be seduced away from our enlightenment, actually. And so I've fully fleshed out The Wizard of Oz in the book I mentioned earlier, and in the Panacea, and it's called Holographic Works of Art, Pandora's Panacea. Here we go into the, so this is the black chakra, this is the silver chakra down by the ankles. This is also the morning star for those of you that are studying that. And then we come back around again. Now, just to tell you, there is an energy lays dormant within your mind, within your physical structure, and within the universal mind. And this is quite a powerful energy. So it's called Kundalini. Please don't poke about with it, because if it shoots up into your psychology, it can rush everything. Historically in your mind, it can bring it forward into consciousness, and you can feel quite overwhelmed with it. And a lot of people that study this kind of knowledge come unstuck because they're overwhelmed with too much knowledge. By the way, if that happens, just stop what you're doing and go and have a rest and come back to it later. Mythology, psychoanalysis. So here I'm mapping on states of consciousness. So here you have your ordinary state of consciousness. Now the thing is with people doing mindfulness, they think it's a new terminology. It's not. It's been around for years. The Buddhists have been practicing it. It's a principle there. And mindfulness really means awareness. Now I've had my eye on this for a little while, and just to explain what's going on in the world at the moment, you see, when you raise, we're in the land of equilibrium. And so when you raise positivity, you do raise negativity too. And you can't split it off and project it out and disown it. Real enlightenment is the integration of the opposite and not the denial of it. And so what does that mean at an individual level? It means that the shadow side of us, that we'd all perhaps prefer wasn't there, we have to learn to integrate that, because, well, as Carl Jung said, we don't become enlightened by imagining images of light here, but by making the darkness conscious, which is what I'm doing in this video. I'm making the invisible conscious, and my reason for doing it is because you can predict what's going to happen next, and it's a pattern of advancement. So here we have the human consciousness, awareness. People are raising awareness. But of course, like I just said, as one comes up, the other one comes up the other side as well. And so there's consciousness. This is the subconscious mind. And then we drop down into the realms of, this is personal subconscious. And then it drops down into the collective unconscious. So this is the motif, the symbolism, and it goes into iconography over from here. Comes all the way back up into the superconsciousness. Now, people that go up into superconsciousness, if they haven't got a healthy ego, often people destroy their egos, and I really wish they wouldn't, because, God didn't make a mistake. You need your ego. Ego means I, means God, actually, and, that's why you've got one. It's just you. If you stay very ego fixed, you'll only be able to perceive this from over here, and by now you'll be not either understanding it or thinking this is rubbish. Okay, but you see, if you use your ego, when you come up into super consciousness, when you have a super level of awareness, while your mind is reordering itself, you really do need your ego on your side. To help you kind of contain your mind while it's being kind of bombarded with some major downloads from the ether. So please, those of you that are practicing spirituality, I know all of them are teaching you to degrade your ego so that you can become higher consciousness. Well, what is the point of that if you can't actually function in the world? You see, it's not about going out of your mind and out of your body. It's about getting the knowledge and bringing it back into what we call reality, for now anyway. Right, so super consciousness up here. And then lastly, into spirituality. This pattern maintains, you see, all the way across. Lastly, in spirituality, the chakras I wrote about all those years ago: white, gold, black, and silver. Just to tell you, the silver is quicksilver. It's also mercury. So I'll just give you that information, and you can see how that fits in with your way you're going to comprehend your life and experience. Okay, this is fast. So although the wavelengths slow down as you come down the colour spindle, although the wavelengths slow down and go into long wave, in fact when it hits here it gets like a supersonic, and so then everything goes very fast, and it can be very bizarre if your mind suddenly connects with this like super energy. And but you go round up here. Now the problem is people who haven't got a good foundation and a good relationship with their ego, they then think they're God because they've gone up into God knowledge, and they can hit the wall. So you've got some really brilliant people that connect with this sort of super God knowledge, and then they lose their footing on earth. And so what you need to do then is come all the way back round and ground in the brown, which is literally put your feet in the earth. So whether I'm talking about or electricity, whether I'm talking about spirituality, if your head is really up there and you're starting to fragment, how you recover from that is to earth yourself, to neutralise it all. Okay, what else to tell you? Just one last thing. When you're on a quest for understanding, meaning and enlightenment, what will happen, and it gets quite bizarre, is an oblique force will come in from the left field and try and stop you. It will try and stop your ascension or your comprehension or your expansion. It will try and stop you as an individual, and it will try and stop us as a soul collective. And so I'm pointing it out. It comes from the left field. Keep your eye on the left field. So every time you have an aha moment, you think, oh wow, that's how that connects up. That's the dots. You see, all I'm doing here is connecting up the dots for you. I've done a lot of reading and research, and I found this really by looking into nature. I watched a flower unfold, and I suddenly was able to map math on top of the flower. And so instead of looking individually in the disciplines, I looked across, and that's how I was able to see this. And then thankfully I'd done a lot of reading in psychoanalysis, so I knew the difference between fragmentation and enlightenment. Okay, so you come back up here. So here's the split, as I said. The archetypes all start to play. Things can get a bit mystical here. Come around and back to here. Now, once we've come around again, which is to integrate this knowledge and come around again, we will have a paradigm shift in consciousness. Now, years and years ago, the Mayans did predict around this time, year 2000, that we would have a shift in our consciousness, a paradigm shift. What that means is one or two people see it, then all of a sudden a lot of people see it, then all of a sudden there's a shift forward where we are able to perceive more. Now, my first experiment at university as a little undergraduate, I ran a little experiment on trying to expand the window of human perception to see if we could. And I was able to show that we could. In my very small little experiment, I was able to train people's ears to hear outside the window of human perception. And so, I mean, it's just more interesting, really, isn't it? Because everything here has already been seen. So it's more interesting to see how far can we go? What else can we do? And so I predict that there will be, whether I've presented this to you or not, and I had a long think about whether to do this or not. Are people ready to see it? But this is going to happen anyway. And so if it happens to you and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm having all these connections and I'm feeling like I'm in some kind of matrix situation, which actually I know it's the name of a film, but it was already written about in philosophy. This is the blueprint of our psychology. We're coming to this level of understanding now, all of us, whatever disciplines we've been studying in. We're coming together for a reason. We kind of are all one up here, but we're not all one down here. But we need to kind of come to another level of understanding for us as individuals and for humanity. So I'm showing you this to predict that down here it gets wobbly and scary, but you keep walking slowly. Up here's prayer and meditation, but down here, you know what? It's ordinary housework. And so if all of this illuminates the schemata at the back of your mind and you suddenly think, oh, now I get it. You might get it and then the next minute feel, oh, what happened there? So I would just go and do some housework. You see, it's all very well to climb mountains and to dig in the earth, but essentially it's about making sense of all of this information and knowledge, and hopefully it will help us make sense of where we are, and we can go forward from here. We're not going to progress, are we, unless we connect some dots here. So this is the code of the universe. I will present my theory of everything, which is a subset of this code. This is two-dimensional. I could take this off of here and twist it and bring in a spiral, and some of you will go out of the ether, but I'm just going to leave it there for now and get on with some homework. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.